Hello everyone, I am Veos and welcome back to another Kerbal Space Program video. This time I'm going to be talking about the career mode streams that I still do. But anyway, so the career mode that I stream when I can is moderate career mode. I say moderate, but it's more custom because I've gone into settings and I've changed the radio blackout, needing radio communication. When Kerbals die, that's it, they don't come back. Turned on the part pressure and strain and all that good stuff, so they break if the pressure's too great. You know, try to keep it a little more challenging. However, for the gaining of science and funds, I left that on moderate. I was thinking about going hard mode, but alas, this is a stream, and I want to try to progress through the game in a relatively decent time. Now, I've played career mode on hard. I've played it on so hard that it took weeks just to unlock, well, not weeks, but it took a week to unlock at least one science node because it took so long to gather so much science in order to unlock that node. And I think failing a mission was like negative $1,000 or $100,000 or something like that. It was really bad. If you messed up on a mission, your credit and money would drop past hell. So it was after a while I kind of got burnt out. But being used to that kind of hard level, when I played moderate, it felt really easy. I mean, I had fun with it, don't get me wrong. Everybody on stream's like, you played hard mode, how in the hell are you what's up? I'm dying laughing on the other side. It's fun. That's what a game's supposed to be, right? Fun. So what if I forget a few things during hard mode that I used to play? I'm like, oh yeah, I have to do this. But anyway, so when I was playing moderate career mode, I finished the 2 first missions or whatever it is, like build your first spacecraft and then go into the atmosphere. And I was surprised that I got a hell of a lot of money out of that and science. So the next thing I did was unlock those 2 nodes, and only having 3 nodes unlocked, I made an SSTO. It was a stick SSTO, but it was still an SSTO. It had girders on the bottom, which surprisingly during launch created very little drag, but I put them down there because I knew through experience, through the extreme hard mode, that they would aid in my descent back to Kerbin. Because it's okay for an SSTO just to make it to orbit and that's it, I get it. But I like my SSTOs to make it throughout the entire mission, go up in the orbit and then come back down and everything in one piece. And during re-entry, because this thing is, well, shtick, it tends to burn up very easily. So the girders at the bottom not only protect the swivel engine that you got there, but they also produce a crap ton of drag on the way down because you're wobbling back and forth, which helps slow down the craft a lot. Landing is a little tricky. You definitely want to land in the water, and you want to try to use the parachute once you land bottom into the water, ass first. You want to try to use the parachute to help guide your nose down as well. You don't want that parachute to suddenly cut off or disappear, as KSP loves to do as soon as you touch something from the surface. Keep that parachute on the nose by turning on your engine just a little bit to make the game think you're still moving forward some way, so that you can use that parachute to land your nose safely into the water. Now later on I focused more on tourism and rescuing Kerbals from orbit, but before that I was doing a bunch of science missions, gathering temperature and all this other good stuff from different altitudes on Kerbin. So in order to gather temperature from different altitudes, especially ones that were way up there like 16,000, 18,000 meters high, I built sub-orbital space planes. Well, I guess they're not really, well, they went into space, but they're not, they're sub-orbital. You know what I'm talking about. They were sub-orbital rocket space planes. They would fly to the destination, point straight up, and then rocket up to 18,000 meters and grab that yummy science. Now, I had a bunch of people, well, I say a bunch, maybe like 1 or 2, on stream telling me that, hey, you could just put a satellite up there. You could put it in a polar orbit and just wait till it crosses that science zone and then collect science that way. And I was trying to tell them that we only had like 3 or 4 science nodes unlocked. So even if I did spend the money to launch a satellite into a polar orbit, the satellite wouldn't have any means whatsoever to stay alive power-wise. There's no means of generating electricity. So once you would gather that information, you'd have to transmit it somehow, which sucks up energy, which means that the satellite itself would only have a lifespan of so many times you could transmit before it was dead. Whereas I could spend money on a plane that could fly out there, grab all 3 of these high altitude science missions, and then return back to base in one piece, allowing me to reuse this plane over and over and over again without spending a whole bunch of money on a rocket. There was some people who said, well, you could just bring the satellite back down. I was like, yeah, but then you have to put it back up. And sure, I could have probably made a first stage that was recoverable, but that's a whole lot of fuel in that first stage, which costs money in game. It was just more practical to use the plane with the rocket attached to it. However, having a rocket attached to a plane gave me an idea. After going through a couple of science missions, very boring, long science missions, I had enough money and enough science to unlock a few more things. Like at this point, I may have like 5 or 6 science nodes unlocked, but I wanted to start testing out actual winged SSTOs. So throughout an entire stream, I was testing out different winged SSTOs. And I remember there was either 1 or 2 people, I think it was just one, who was telling me that my approach to winged SSTOs would never work if I didn't use a jet engine. And even then, my jet engine was just a little tiny Juno engine, so they were convinced that this was never going to work. And every time I tested it and tested it and tested it and got closer and closer and closer to making a winged SSTO, they finally left the stream saying it would never work, that I didn't know what I was doing, and blah, 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 blah. However, I thought it was hilarious that only after maybe 20 minutes later, I actually got a winged SSTO to work without Juno engines. It was just your typical rocket SSTO, winged rocket SSTO. And I remember the stream exploding saying, "Congratulations, woo, it worked." And what did that person know anyway? Now, after I got that winged SSTO to work, I started building bigger winged SSTOs to carry more tourists into orbit. Like I said before, I was shying away from science missions and part testing and all that good stuff, and going more towards rescuing Kerbals and transporting tourists to their destination. For me, that was actually easier, rescuing Kerbals and flying tourists around and stuff. It was kind of more fun too. The money that I would get from doing that, I could use towards science missions. And if they're, well, not science missions that were made by me. Like if I wanted to go somewhere and collect a whole bunch of science and bring back, if there was an actual mission in that area that I was going to go and spend money on, then I would select it. But if there wasn't, I'd go anyway, because I know that there's a bunch of science to be had in that area. Does that make sense? But now came that one mission to go to the moon, or MUN, however you want to know, whatever. Now, I knew that going to the moon would be a little hard because I had not yet updated the KSC, or the radar building navigation complex. Well, I forget what it was off the top of my head. I can't think about it anyway. So I did not have the ability to make any maneuver nodes in space. Now, when I was rescuing Kerbals from around Kerbin orbit, they were in a different plane than I was, orbital plane, but I kind of knew how to get myself into that same plane without using maneuver nodes, so it was fine. Going to the moon, on the other hand, I had to stretch my brain out a little bit and go back in time to when I used to be able to do this before they even came out with maneuver nodes, way back in the day. There's a whole bunch of techniques and tricks to going to the moon and back without needing any maneuver nodes, stuff we used to do back in the day. And I think the mission was just to go to the moon and come back, but I was like, oh, screw it, why not land on the sucker while I'm there? So I made a completely reusable 2-staged moon lander for my first moon mission. And for some of you who know what it looks like, yes, I did take inspiration from Solar Nations. So we launched it, had the second stage come back, land in the water, and I remember everybody saying, it's too hot, it's gonna die, it's gonna nosedive, it's gonna die. You know, they were telling me how I was gonna end horribly for the first stage, but no, it landed and it was good, it was fine. Second stage with the crew, left, went to the moon, landed, got some science from it, came back. Coming back was a little scary because I remember there was different types of techniques. One of the techniques is to get into orbit around the moon first, and then when you come around it and as soon as you see Kerbin coming over the horizon, you burn towards Kerbin. The other technique is to land at the 2 or 3 o'clock position as if the moon was a clock and Kerbin was above it. You would land at the 2 or 3 o'clock position. And then when you took off, you just skimmed the surface as hard as you could towards Kerbin, which actually uses less delta V than if I was to burn into orbit first, circularize, and then wait until I got to a position where Kerbin was coming over the horizon before I made the other burn, because you're saving delta V from not having to circularize around the moon. But anyway, still, it was a little scary because I was, kind of blind, just kind of remembering my training from the past. All my training has prepared me for this day. That kind of bullshit. But we made it back. Now, I knew the capabilities of the craft because of the fact that I had built something similar in Solar Nations back in the day. So I knew it could land back on Kerbin without having to go around Kerbin a few times and slow down. Now, what I forgot was that in Solar Nations, I had a lot more girders, which allowed for more control on the way down, whereas this build only had 4 girders for landing legs, so it had a really bad tendency of flipping around nose first into the atmosphere. I found that out the hard way, but it was still really exciting. Everybody in chat was screaming their heads off, like, you're gonna burn up, you're gonna die. People were telling me, spin, spin, spin. But no, we didn't burn up and we didn't die. It was a little sketchy there at first when the craft flipped around because of the lack of drag that I had inadvertently not put into the craft properly. But anyway, it was fun. We landed back. All Kerbals were fine. They survived. But then I started taking contracts to save Kerbals at the moon, as well as taking tourists to the moon, using an upgraded version of what we ended up calling the Prometheus. Now at this point, I think we had 6 or 7 science nodes unlocked. Still didn't have solar panels yet, so whatever craft I built, I had to shove a ton of batteries in it. I upgraded what we called the Trident Star because it had 3 fuselages, made it look a lot cooler, a lot better. But I was making money hand over fist in the game because these tourist missions and these saving Kerbal missions were actually very profitable. So I focused most of my crafts on that. On top of that, I had never built any craft where I wasted any part. So it was either SSTOs or 2-staged rockets. I remember coming back down into a thunderstorm because I had just downloaded, the new volumetric clouds mod. The mod has thunderstorms in it too, which was just freaking gorgeous. So now the goal is to build a 2-staged plane rocket, not plane, winged aircraft rocket to be able to send Kerbals to the moon and back. This is going to replace the Prometheus rocket. Well, I'm actually going to call it the Prometheus. It's like an evolved version of the Prometheus. Instead of having to use the launch pad, it uses the runway. So that's going to be in our next stream. I've already built it. I've already tested it. It works beautifully. I'm just tweaking it, but definitely look forward to that in the next stream. Usually before I put out a stream, I'll put out a notification of when and where the stream will happen. Give people some heads up, some time. So definitely look forward to that if you're subscribed, and just make sure you hit that bell notification. But anyway, that has been it. 10 different streams put into a rather short video. I say short, I don't know how long this is going to be. I'm going to try to keep it under 10-15 minutes. If you liked what you saw, please hit that like button, and if you really liked what you saw, consider subscribing. I upload often, mostly Kerbal Space Program for now. Dun dun dun. We also have a membership program if you're interested. If you become a member, you get cool little emojis and badges next to your name and whatnot. Pretty cool. Check it out. But anyway, this has been a Kerbal Space Program video for career mode and SSTOs and stuff. Love you all. Stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now. Bye-bye.